The snow fell heavy and relentless on the Wyoming territory, a white curtain closing off the rest of the world. Each flake settled like a silent weight on the roof of the isolated cabin, burying the memories of warmer days. Jax Thorne stood at the frosted window, his breath clouding the glass. He was a man built of sharp angles and scar tissue, his reputation as a gunslinger having long preceded him into this valley. But the Colt peacemaker hanging on the back of his chair had remained cold for 2 years, ever since the fever took Clara. Now, Jax fought a different kind of war, one against the silence that filled the cabin and the loneliness that haunted his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily sat on the rough-hewn rug near the hearth, stringing popcorn for the tree Jax had dragged in that morning. It was Christmas Eve. The air was thick with the scent of pine and wood smoke, but void of the joy that used to live here. "Papa, is the stagecoach coming?" Lily asked, her voice small. Jax's jaw tightened. "It's due, Lily. If the pass is open." He had answered the advertisement in a St. Louis paper 3 months ago. Widower seeks wife. Practical arrangement. Must be kind to children. He hadn't done it for love. Love was a luxury a retired gunfighter couldn't afford twice. He did it because Lily needed a mother, and the homestead needed hands that didn't instinctively curl into fists. "I hope she likes snow," Lily hummed, tying off a string. "And I hope she stays." Jax said nothing. He stared down the empty road, watching it vanish into the whiteout. He hoped for a woman who was sturdy, someone who could handle the harsh winters, and a man with blood on his ledger. A distant rumble broke the silence. The stagecoach emerged from the tree-line, a dark beetle crawling through the drifts. It slowed to a halt at his fence line. Jax pulled on his coat, the leather worn and stiff. "Stay here, Lily." He stepped out into the biting wind. The stagecoach driver, a man named Henderson who knew better than to make small talk with Jax Thorne, tossed a single, battered carpet bag onto the snow. Then the door opened. Jax expected a sturdy farm girl from Missouri or a widow from the east in heavy wool. What stepped out made his boots freeze in the drifts. The woman was slight, shivering violently the moment the wind hit her. She didn't wear wool or flannel. She wore a dress of foreign cut, a cheongsam of faded crimson silk, the high collar frayed, the intricate frog clasps holding together fabric that was threadbare and patched. It offered no protection against a Wyoming winter. Her shoes were thin slippers, wrapped in rags to keep the snow from her skin. She was Chinese. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, dark as a raven's wing, highlighting the pale exhaustion of her face. She clutched her bag with white-knuckled desperation. Henderson snapped the reins, eager to leave, and the coach rolled away, leaving silence in its wake. Jax stared. This was not what he had expected. The advertisement hadn't mentioned race, and the agency hadn't mentioned poverty this profound. "Mr. Thorne." Her voice was a whisper, carried away by the wind. She pronounced his name carefully. "Ya Meilin." Before Jax could respond, the cabin door creaked open. Lily, unable to wait, ran out into the snow in her boots. "She's here." "Lily, get back inside," Jax barked, though not unkindly. Lily ignored him, sliding to a stop in front of the stranger. She looked at the shivering woman, at the red silk fluttering in the gale. "Papa, she's freezing. Look at her dress. It's like a fairy tale, but it's full of holes." Lily reached out, grabbing Mei Lin's frozen hand. "Come on. Papa keeps the fire hot." Jax saw the hesitation in Mei Lin's eyes, the fear of rejection, the brace for cruelty. He had seen that look in men facing the barrel of his gun. He stepped forward, his large frame blocking the wind. "Inside," Jax said, his voice gruff, "before you both freeze." He didn't offer his arm, he wasn't a gentleman, but he picked up her carpet bag. It was light, heartbreakingly so. Inside the cabin, the warmth hit them like a physical blow. Mei Lin stood near the door, water dripping from her hem onto the floorboards. She looked around the rustic space, her eyes landing on the gun belt, then moving to the child. She held herself with a rigid dignity, spine straight despite the shivers racking her frame. Sit by the fire, Jax commanded, pointing to his armchair. I would not want to dampen your furniture, she said, her teeth chattering. It's wood and leather. It dries. Sit. She obeyed, sinking into the chair. Lily was already moving, disappearing into the kitchen. She returned with a steaming mug. This is coffee, Lily explained seriously. It's in Mama's cup, the one with the blue flowers. She said it made the coffee taste like spring. Jack stiffened. That was Clara's favorite cup. He hadn't touched it in 2 years. Mei Lin's hands trembled as she accepted the offering. She looked at the chipped porcelain, then at the little girl. It is a beautiful cup, she said softly. I am honored to hold it. She took a sip, and the color began to ghost back into her cheeks. Jax leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, studying her. The red silk was mended in a dozen places with tiny, precise stitches. It was the clothes of a woman who had nothing left but her pride. You're a long way from home, ma'am, Jack said. Mei Lin lowered the cup. I have no home, Mr. Thorne. Not anymore. The agency. They didn't say. They did not say I was Chinese? She met his gaze, her dark eyes steady. If they had, would you have paid for my passage? Jax held her gaze. He was a man who valued truth, even when it was ugly. Likely not. This country isn't kind to your kind. And I ain't known for being a socialite. I know of your reputation, she said. The gunslinger of the basin. I know you are a dangerous man. And yet you came. Starvation is also dangerous, Mr. Thorne. And loneliness is a slow death. She gestured to Lily, who was now stroking the silk of Mei Lin's sleeve in wonder. I saw a father looking for help. I am a widow who needs a roof. I can cook. I can sew. I can teach. I ask for nothing but safety. Why the rags? Jax asked bluntly. The money I sent for travel. It was enough for a coat. Mei Lin looked down at her hands. My husband was a merchant in San Francisco. When he died, his debts were significant. The creditors took everything. The house, the furniture, my Western clothes. I sold the ticket you sent to pay the last of his honor debt and traveled in the cattle cars to get here. I would not come to you owing another man money. Jax felt a strange sensation in his chest. Respect. She had ridden across the country in winter, in a cattle car, wearing silk, just to settle a dead man's debts and arrive with a clean slate. That was a code of honor most men he knew didn't possess. You paid a high price for honor, Jack said. It is the only thing that cannot be taken from us, she replied. Lily, Jack said, pushing off the doorframe. Show Miss Mei Lin the spare room. Give her one of my flannel shirts and a blanket. We'll find her something proper to wear tomorrow. As Lily led the guest away, chattering about the Christmas tree, Jax looked at the puddle of melted snow where she had stood. He had expected a servant. He had received a survivor. The next few days fell into a rhythm that Jax hadn't anticipated. He expected an adjustment period, tears, perhaps complaints about the harsh conditions. Instead, Mei Lin moved through the cabin like a quiet storm of efficiency. She wore Jax's oversized flannel shirt, belted at the waist with a piece of rope, the sleeves rolled up to reveal slender but capable forearms. She didn't try to change their lives. She simply elevated them. The stew that night had spices Jax didn't recognize, coaxing flavor out of the dried venison. The chaotic pantry was reorganized. But it was her interaction with Lily that unsettled him most. Jax watched from the barn doorway as Mei Lin sat with Lily on the porch, wrapped in blankets. Mei Lin was teaching her how to cut paper into intricate shapes. In my culture, Mei Lin was saying, her voice melodic, we use red paper for luck. But newspaper will do. It looks like a snowflake that doesn't melt, Lily exclaimed, holding up a jagged cutout. It is an endless knot, Mei Lin corrected gently. It means long life and happiness. Papa needs happiness, Lily said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He's sad since Mama died. He cleans his guns when he's sad. Jax stepped back into the shadows of the barn. He looked at his hands, scarred and rough. He had forgotten how to be anything other than a protector. He provided food, he provided shelter, he provided safety. But happiness? That was a language he had forgotten how to speak. On Christmas morning, the world was buried in diamond dust. The sun broke over the peaks, blindingly bright. Lily was up before dawn, shaking Jax awake. "Papa! Papa! It's Christmas." They went into the main room. Under the tree, wrapped in brown paper, were a few small things Jax had bought in town months ago. A new slate for school, a ribbon, a bag of peppermint sticks. But Lily ran to a small object resting on the mantel. It was a doll, sewn from the scraps of the red silk cheongsam and stuffed with dried moss. The face was embroidered with delicate thread, smiling. "Miss Mei Lin made this," Lily gasped, hugging it to her chest. "Look, Papa, it's wearing a dress like hers." Mei Lin emerged from the kitchen, holding a tray of biscuits. She looked uncertain. "I hope it is acceptable. I had little material." "It's beautiful," Lily declared. She ran to Mei Lin and buried her face in the woman's waist. "Thank you." Mei Lin froze for a second. Then her hand came down to stroke Lily's hair. Jax saw her eyes close, a look of profound relief crossing her face. Jax cleared his throat. He reached into his pocket. He hadn't wrapped it. He walked over to the table and placed a small wooden carving there. It was a mockingbird, wings spread, caught in mid-flight. He had whittled it late at night in the barn over the last week. "For you," Jax said to Mei Lin. She set the tray down. She picked up the wooden bird, running her thumb over the curve of the wing. "You made this." "Wood's free," Jax said gruffly. "Figured you might like something that flies, since you've been grounded here." "It is the most beautiful thing I have ever owned," she whispered. She looked at him, and for the first time her guard dropped completely. "Thank you, Jax." The use of his first name hung in the air, intimate and startling. 2 days later, the supplies ran low. The storm had broken, leaving the roads passable. Jax hitched the horses to the wagon. "I need to go to town," he announced. "You both come. We need to get you boots and a proper coat." "Mei Lin," she hesitated. "I can make do with." "No," Jax cut her off. "You're part of this household now. You don't walk around in my old shirts." The ride to town was crisp. Lily sat between them, holding the red silk doll. When they pulled up to the general store, the boardwalk was crowded. The town of Oakhaven was small, and gossip moved faster than the wind. Jax helped Mei Lin down. She wore his heavy coat, which swallowed her frame, but beneath it, the tattered hem of the red dress was visible. As they walked toward the store, silence rippled through the crowd. Eyes turned. Jax Thorne was a man people usually avoided, but the sight of the Chinese woman at his side emboldened them. Mrs. Higgins, the banker's wife and the town's self-appointed moral compass, stepped out of the post office. She adjusted her bonnet, her eyes narrowing as they swept over Mei Lin. "Well?" Mrs. Higgins sniffed loudly to her companion. "I heard the Gunslinger got a mail-order bride, but I didn't think he'd stoop to importing heathens. And in such rags. It's indecent." Mei Lin stiffened, her chin lifting. She stared straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge the slight. Jack stopped. The wood of the boardwalk creaked under his boots. He turned slowly. The crowd went deadly quiet. Jax didn't reach for his gun, he didn't have to. The look in his eyes was lethal enough. "You got something to say, Mrs. Higgins?" His voice was a low rumble, like thunder in a canyon. Mrs. Higgins flushed. "I was merely remarking on the appearance. It reflects poorly on the community, Mr. Thorne. A woman of no means and foreign extraction." "This woman," Jack said, his voice carrying clearly down the street, traveled 3,000 miles in a cattle car in the dead of winter to honor a debt she didn't owe. She has more spine in her little finger than you have in your entire council of gossips. He stepped closer, and the crowd parted. "She is under my protection," Jack said, "and she is under my roof. If any of you have a problem with her clothes or her face or where she comes from, you bring that problem to me. Do I make myself clear?" Mrs. Higgins paled and scurried back into the post office. The blacksmith, an old friend named Sam, tipped his hat. "Clear as day, Jax." "Ma'am." He nodded to Mei Lin. Jax placed a hand on the small of Mei Lin's back, a possessive, protective gesture, and guided her into the store. Inside, Mei Lin walked to a display of wool coats. Her hands were shaking. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I have brought you shame." Jax turned her around to face him. He took her hands in his. They were rough against her smooth skin. "You didn't bring shame, Mei Lin. You brought the truth. They just don't like looking at it." He picked up a heavy, blue wool coat with a fur collar. "Try this on. It matches your eyes." Mei Lin looked up at him, startled. "My eyes are dark. Like the night sky," Jax said. "Best thing to look at in this territory." The weeks following the trip to town brought a thaw, both outside and inside the cabin. The tension of strangers living together dissolved into the comfort of a family formed. Jax found himself coming in from the barn earlier, eager for the sound of Mei Lin's voice reading to Lily. But the ghost of the past still lingered. One evening, after Lily had gone to sleep, Jax found Mei Lin by the fire. She was mending his work gloves. "She calls you Mama sometimes," Jax said, standing by the mantel. "By accident." Mei Lin didn't look up. "I know." I correct her gently. I tell her I am Mei Lin. "I do not wish to replace Clara." "Clara is gone," Jax said. The words tasted like ash, but also like truth. "She's been gone a long time. Grief is a heavy coat," Mei Lin said softly. "It is hard to take off, even when the sun shines." "I'm tired of the cold, Mei Lin." She stopped stitching. She looked up at him, the firelight dancing in her dark eyes. "What are you saying, Jax?" Jax walked over to her. He knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level. He was a man of action, not words, so he spoke plainly. "I sent for a worker. I sent for help. But that ain't what I see when I look at you anymore." "What do you see?" "I see the woman who saved my daughter from silence. I see the woman who stood tall against a whole town. I see a woman I don't want to see leave." Mei Lin's breath hitched. "I am a poor widow, Jax. I have nothing to offer you but these hands. Your hands are enough. Your heart is enough." Jax reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. It wasn't a diamond. It was a simple band of gold, one he had kept in his safety box. It wasn't Clara's ring, that was saved for Lily. This was his mother's. "I ain't a gentle man, Mei Lin. I come with a past and I come with a temper. But I swear to you, I will never let you go cold again. I will stand between you and the world until the day I die." Tears spilled over Mei Lin's lashes. She reached out and touched his scarred cheek. "You are not a cold man, Jax Thorne. You are the fire in the hearth. You are the shelter." "Will you stay?" he asked. "Not as a guest. As my wife." "Yes," she whispered. "I will stay." Spring arrived late in the territory, but when it did, it came with a vengeance. The snow melted into rushing creeks, and the gray world burst into green. On the porch of the cabin, 3 people sat watching the sunset. Lily was running in the tall grass, chasing a butterfly. Jax sat on the steps, cleaning his rifle, not out of necessity, but habit. Mei Lin sat beside him. She wore a simple dress of blue calico that she had sewn herself, but around her neck, she wore a scarf made from the salvaged red silk of her old cheongsam, a reminder of where she had come from. "Look," she said, pointing to the patch of earth near the steps. Pushing up through the thawing mud were tiny purple flowers. "Crocuses. Clara planted those," Jax said, his voice steady. "Years ago." "They are resilient," Mei Lin said. "They survive the winter to bring beauty to the spring." Jax set the rifle down. He put his arm around his wife's shoulders, pulling her close. The gunslinger had found peace, not in the barrel of a gun, but in the quiet strength of a woman who had arrived in rags and taught him how to see the worth in the broken things. "Welcome home, Mei Lin," he murmured into her hair. She rested her head on his shoulder, watching the purple flowers sway in the gentle breeze. "I am home, Jax." I am home.